Hello, and welcome back. Today we are on Irad, son of Enoch, grandson of Cain. And well, this is one of the figures they give very little info on, and I mean a very little. When reading about the early chapters of Genesis, particularly the events of Genesis 6, it's been rare to find the texts spoken about without reference to the ungodly line of Cain and the godly line of Seth. I admit, for much of my Christian life, I have judged Cain's line by Cain's actions, and Seth's, by Seth's. I have read Genesis 4 and 5 umpteen times, and just about every time I do so with the idea that Cain's descendants are all very ungodly, in a way over and above the fallen nature common to all men. And I admit, it does not start well for that family. From Cain came Enoch, from Enoch came Irad, from Irad came Mehujael, from Mehujael, and from Mehujael, Methushael, and from Methushael, Lamech. Of most of these men, we do not know much, at least not until we get to Lamech. So as for Irad, this is what we have, short and simple. Irad is a name in Hebrew. In the book of Genesis, the grandson of Cain is Irad. Genesis 4:18, in a genealogical passage about the descendants. Irad is a name in Hebrew. In the book of Genesis, the grandson of Cain is Irad. Genesis 4:18, in a genealogical passage about the descendants of Cain, contains the only reference to Irad in the Bible. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad was the father of Mehujael, and Mehujael the father of Methushael, and Methushael the father of Lamech. The lineage of Cain in Genesis 4:17 through 22 closely parallels the lineage of Cain's brother Seth found in Genesis 5:1 through 32. In terms of the documentary hypothesis, the genealogy of Cain is attributed to the Yahwist source, while the genealogy of Seth is attributed to the priestly source. The J list and P list contain 7 pairs of similar names, and the Irad of the Yahwist source is parallel to the Jared of the priestly source. And so now that we are talking about Julius Welhausen's documentary hypothesis, which I mentioned a few times in past videos, let's take a minute to understand this, because when you look at it, this explains or could explain the not so much info on some of these said characters. In 1878 Julius Welhausen published Geschichte Israels, BD 1. History of Israel, Volume 1, the second edition he printed as Prolegomena zur Geschichte Israels, Prolegomena to the History of Israel, in 1883, and the work is better known under that name. The second volume, a synthetic history titled Israelitische und Jüdische Geschichte Israelite and Jewish History, did not appear until 1894 and remains untranslated. Crucially, this historical portrait was based upon 2 earlier works of his technical analysis, Die Komposition des Hexateuchs, the composition of the Hexateuch, of 1876/77 and sections on the historical books, Judges and Kings, in his 1878 edition of Friedrich Bleek's Einleitung in das Alte Testament, Introduction to the Old Testament. Welhausen's documentary hypothesis owed little to Welhausen himself but was mainly the work of Hupfeld, Eduard Hugo N. Royce, Graff, and others, who in turn had built on earlier scholarship. He accepted Hupfeld's 4 sources and, in agreement with Graff, placed the priestly work last. J was the earliest document, a product of the 10th century BCE and the court of Solomon. E was from the 9th century in the northern kingdom of Israel, and had been combined by a redactor, editor, with J to form a document JE. D, the third source, was a product of the 7th century BCE. By 620 BCE, during the reign of King Josiah, P, what Welhausen first named Q, was a product of the priest and temple-dominated world of the 6th century, and the final redaction, when P was combined with J, E, D, to produce the Torah as we now know it. Welhausen's explanation of the formation of the Torah was also an explanation of the religious history of Israel. The Yahwist and Allahist described a primitive, spontaneous, and personal world, in keeping with the earliest stage of Israel's history. In Deuteronomy he saw the influence of the prophets and the development of an ethical outlook, which he felt represented the pinnacle of Jewish religion, and the priestly source reflected the rigid, ritualistic world of the priest-dominated post-exilic period. His work, notable for its detailed and wide-ranging scholarship and close argument, entrenched the new documentary hypothesis as the dominant explanation of Pentateuchal origins from the late 19th to the late 20th centuries. Welhausen used the sources of the Torah as evidence of changes in the history of Israelite religion as it moved, in his opinion, from free, simple, and natural to fixed, formal and institutional. Modern scholars of Israel's religion have become much more circumspect in how they use the Old Testament, not least because many have concluded that the Bible is not a reliable witness to the religion of ancient Israel and Judah, representing instead the beliefs of only a small segment of the ancient Israelite community centered in Jerusalem and devoted to the exclusive worship of the God Yahweh. And so that's it for this video. Hope you all enjoyed it, and please hit a like, share, and please subscribe till tomorrow. Peace out, people.